Jackson,
Yeah.
Thank you for your patience. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Carson Grace Becker, and I am the artistic director here at Chicago Dramatists. And for 44 years, all Chicago Dramatists has done is devote its time, resources, time and talent to the development of new American plays. And what you're seeing today is part of that programming. It's a very special day wherein we are celebrating our Access Project program. And please bear with me for a second, and I'm going to read you a description of that. Hang on. Sorry, my phone. So we here at Chicago Dramatists are committed to diversity, inclusion, and to supporting and uplifting deaf and disabled artists on their creative journey. We recognize that these artists are often marginalized and benefit from opportunities to break through to mainstream culture. We believe that theater offers one of the most important vehicles for changing perceptions about disability and disabled artists. We are one of the few programs in the country to offer professional playwriting support to deaf and disabled artists. Actually, we now may be one of a very small handful since the program at the Mark Taper Forum and Victory Gardens have closed. The program has been was established in 2019, and we've had the honor of offering 3 fellowships thus far and are getting ready to select, well, actually we have selected our 4th, and you'll find that out in the talkback. Our goal is twofold: development of the artists themselves, and if the artist is writing about disability, to support them in the creation of an authentic representation. We are committed to providing funding, audience, and collaborators for new work by deaf and disabled playwrights. We respect the need for accommodation and have placed no time limit on the duration of the fellowship. Some of our awardees have completed the fellowship in 6 months, while others have taken 2 years. The fellowship is here to serve the artists and therefore designed to be individualized. So, today you are going to hear 2 pieces, one by Deb Stein, who is our graduating fellow, and one by Arlene Malinowski, who is one of my dearest and longest friends and colleagues, and who came to me 4 years ago and helped and suggested that we do this, and we've been doing it ever since. So I'm not going to take any more time. I'm going to hand it over to Glenn B. Rust, but before I do that, I just want to do a few housekeeping things. Please turn off your cell phones if you haven't done so. Know that the show is going to run about 1:20 hours, and after the show we'll have a break, and then we will meet back here, and there's going to be a roundtable talk-back discussion about the work itself, and then your experience here with this particular programming that Glenn has put together for us. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Glenn. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming this afternoon. My name is Glenn B. Rust. I'm the former technical director here at Chicago Dramatists, and I am currently studying at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago for Arts Administration and Policy. And today is acting as the culmination of my thesis performance. So thank you all so much for coming. This project, Keep It Going, was built around the fact that during the pandemic, like many other theater technicians, it was my responsibility to figure out how we at Chicago Dramatists would move all of our operations online and figure out how to do everything via live streaming. And during that time, the folks that we were primarily learning from were theater organizations within the deaf and disabled community who had already been doing this work for many, many years. As well, we saw a huge boost to initiatives and to grants and funding dedicated towards technologies to improve accessibility in theaters during that time. It was this fabulous way that we took an incredibly challenging moment and made it into an opportunity. And since then, as we've started to return to our in-person theater spaces, I've noticed that there are many organizations that are starting to let some of that go, as opposed to learning from what we experienced during that time. So this project is about trying to keep that work going and keep it here in the theater space. I'm going to begin by unfortunately making a slight apology. One of the main intentions of today's program was going to be built around that captioning element that I spoke of. The reason we were just delayed is our captioning service has fallen through, so as a result we are not able to have the captions that we were hoping for. I deeply apologize for this, but that's also something that I'm going to now bring up in regards to our service. The reason this is so important is because, again, this is a research project. It is not a fully polished production. And I need to be able to take this data and present it to organizations like the captioning service that just failed to work for us. And tell them why we need this to work. So, again, please fill out the surveys. And even though I'm telling you right now that I know the captions work, in that survey answer, tell me I'm really disappointed the captions didn't work. It's really beneficial, and all of your data is going to be super helpful in keeping this research going and making sure that after this project we are able to improve this type of programming and make it that much better the next time around. Now I'm going to go through an exceedingly long list of thank yous, so please save your applause for the end of it, because otherwise we will be here all day. First, I would like to thank Chicago Dramatists for opening up their space to me here and for connecting me with all these fabulous artists that you are going to see perform this afternoon. Then I would like to thank Atlee Gilbert, who is not here with us in person, but who you all can find in the chat. She will be dropping a link to the survey so you can fill it out yourselves, and she will also be providing some information on how you can donate to support the Access Fellowship that Carson brought up. Every dollar counts, so thank you so much for that. I would also like to thank Kate Doubleton at SAIC and the entire SAIC Masters of Arts Administration and Policy program for bringing me to this point. I'd like to thank Cultural Access Collaborative for lending us these fabulous caption screens that will be pretty set dressing for this afternoon. I would like to thank South Wayne Law for providing a sponsorship for me to purchase all of the sound equipment that you're going to see used. I just realized I hit my mic, sorry to the folks at home. I would like to thank my fabulous person Riley for putting together the program for this afternoon and for keeping me sane these past few months. And I would like to thank all of you for being part of this, for joining us here today, and for helping us continue to make theater that much more beautiful, accessible, and inviting of a space for collaborators all around. So without further ado, please enjoy Keep It Going.
Can I interrupt? What I just want to say is, hold on, I'm going to get in front of the camera. I'm going to get in front of you, hold my mints.
Absolutely.
So, for any deaf people in the audience on the live stream, please just turn on your closed caption. You'll be able to see all of the information and the acting on there. Thank you.
Thank you.
There, Arlene Malinowski solves yet another problem.
Up first, we have Interrobang by Arlene Malinowski, starring Anna Seibert and Diane Dorsey. A young woman, Megan, sits in the waiting room of a retirement home. She is greeted by Elizabeth.
Hello there. Staff said they want me to show you around. I'm Elizabeth.
Oh, it's nice to meet you. I'm Megan.
Well, we're located on 5 acres in a country-like setting with beautifully appointed residences of all kinds. They like us to start with the spiel, but I like to go off script.
Great.
Who are you looking to find a home for?
Oh, my grandmother. She's, so how long have you lived here?
For a while, I guess. I love it. Oh, and I'm not just saying that because it's my job.
Really? Well, how could you? I mean,
Oh, my house got too big. I have my own life here. It's like being back in college, except the drugs are better. Oh, now over there, we have our library.
that looks nice.
We have programs and speakers that come in. And here, in the formal dining living room, we have all of the streaming services.
You really like your TV in here. Me too. So don't you blame your family for putting you in here?
God, no. I grew up in a tiny house with parents and all kinds of aunts and cousins. Now, because of the economy, you all are going back to the old days. This is a luxury. If you got your marbles and feel pretty good,
Well, what if you don't have your marbles?
then it doesn't matter where you are, right? Here. Here is our art walk. All the work is done by the residents.
Well, isn't it kind of depressing in here sometimes?
Of course, it is, but there is something about the fortitude. There is a great deal of strength in this place. Do you like pointillism?
Love. Up close, one thing, step back, it's another. I've always loved that one over there.
Oh God, I hate it.
Why?
Every senior living facility thinks they need a picture of clouds and sunsets. It's a cliche. Now, this one over here has gotten mixed reviews. At first I thought it was stupid. A big exclamation mark point through the middle of a question mark. You couldn't ask the artist, he died. But then it grew on me. Now I think it means that you have to ask the big questions in life with verve and gusto.
It's called an interrobang. It's a punctuation mark. You know, it asks a question in an exciting manner like, my hair is on fire? Master's in English. You learn a lot of geeky stuff.
Interrobang. Oh, I like it. Good word.
Some guy in advertising invented it in the 60s, but it didn't catch on.
Oh, what a pretty ring.
Oh.
Have you decided on a date?
Oh, I don't know. We haven't set a date. I mean, never mind.
What's the matter, sweetheart?
Nothing. It's stupid.
You can tell me. Is it him?
No, he's great. But I just can't even be happy about it because I'm just so big. I'm scared to go shopping for a dress. I don't want to look like a fat cupcake in a veil.
You're beautiful.
No, I'm not. Every morning I think, today I'm going to eat clean, measure, weigh, write everything down, and then when I get home from work, it just all falls apart, and then I feel disgusting and I hate myself. And I mean, I know I'm not supposed to say that I'm supposed to be body positive or body neutral or whatever, but I've always been the fat girl, and I don't want to be the fat bride.
Oh, sweetheart. You'll figure it out. You always do.
No, I'm sorry.
For what?
For crying like a crazy person. I mean, I just don't have anybody to talk to anymore.
Well, it's okay. Crying is allowed in here.
I love him. I do,
Oh.
but I'm so ashamed.
It's wonderful to have someone who loves you, especially when you're feeling ashamed. I have a girlfriend, and she loves me no matter what.
What do you mean, a girlfriend? A girlfriend or like a girlfriend?
A girlfriend.
You're gay? What about your husband? I mean, well, you're wearing a wedding ring.
You're right. I did have a husband, but he died. He was the love of my life. And now, I have Rebecca.
When did this happen?
A while back. There are many kinds of romantic love. You'll see. There's that first love. Oh, and toxic love. Soulful love. Unrequited sad love. The one who got away love and lust love.
And there's the great love. I think that's the breathtaking kind of love, deep and wide.
Oh, that's a pretty way to put that. You are an English major.
I think that he's my great love. But you and Rebecca?
Oh, it's nice to have her now. She's my unexpected love. Oh, but keep it to yourself. We're keeping it a secret until we move in together. Don't want to be sus.
Sus? How do you know sus?
The View.
And you're moving in together. Who are you?
I am a grown woman with my own money. I wish you people would stop discounting me.
Sorry.
Apology accepted. So, do you have a picture of your fiance in that phone of yours? Oh, you both look so happy. Who's this?
Oh, my mother. Her name's Kate.
Huh. I have a daughter named Kate.
You do?
Never liked her. Oh, it's a horrible thing not to like your own child. No one talks about it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. She doesn't like me either. She's smart. She's funny. She's a great mother. I just don't like her. But I do love her. She is cleaved to my heart.
Cleaved?
Mm.
Good word.
Well, now, you know my secret, 2 secrets. Oh, over there is the dining room. It's called our country kitchen. The food is terrific. Food's a big deal here. Well, all right. That's the end of our tour. Anything else I can do for you?
It was so nice meeting you.
You too. Tell your mom that she will always be cleaved to my heart.
Grandma, is that you? Do you know who I am?
Of course I do. You're my granddaughter, Megan, who graduated from DePaul in 2021.
Wait, why are you doing this?
It's just too much on the family. The ups and the downs. They never knew what they were walking into, and this way they know what to expect.
But what are you talking about?
Sweetheart, there are days when my mind is strong, and there are days when my mind is tired and I get confused. But I try to keep busy, find my brain. When I go to bed at night, I pray I'll wake up, feel like myself, and today I feel like myself.
You sound like yourself, but this is kind of crazy.
It's lovely to stay in that here and now connection, to be together with no history, no baggage.
A different perspective. Pointillism. I get it.
Well, I wasn't thinking about that, but you do have a point. Oh, you know, sweetheart, this way we can say things to each other that we wouldn't say in real life.
Grandma, why did you tell me all that stuff about Mom?
I know that you two aren't getting along. Liking someone and loving someone are 2 different things. When you can let go of the past, like what happened at the engagement party, you leave a little space for the good things.
She told you about the party? See, she's such...
She told me because she thought that I wasn't in my right head and knew that I wouldn't judge her. Come here. Give me a kiss. I have to go back to work. I love you.
I love you more.
Oh, don't tell anyone. Your mom will kill me. But you can tell your fiance if you want. It's nice for couples to have secrets.
Like you and your girlfriend.
Yes, like me and my gay girlfriend. Bye. Oh, bye. Oh. What did you say your name was?
Megan.
Oh, that's right. Megan.
End of play.
Up next, we have Hand, Foot, Hand, written and performed by Deborah Kent Stein, directed by Kate Hendrickson.
Little Falls, New Jersey had 6,000 people when I was growing up. My great-grandfather settled there from Holland in 1882. I'm fourth generation Little Falls. That doesn't mean much to most people, but back home, it counted for a lot. When I walked with Mom down Main Street, it seemed like someone stopped us every 20 steps. Hi, how's the family? Did you hear what happened to? Everybody knew my family. Everybody knew me, even though I didn't go to school in Little Falls like my brother Zach and all the other kids in our neighborhood. I had to go with a special driver to a special class on the first floor over in Patterson. I begged to go to school in Little Falls, but the grown-ups always said no. People used to tell me, "Your parents are wonderful." Neighbors said it, scout leaders, even the guy at the shoe store. I was going into fourth grade, and Zach was starting second. Gordy, the youngest, was in preschool, and next year he'd be at Patterson too. We'd been slogging through all those old New Jersey stores, like burgers, hot tire into one more of I thought, what on earth are you talking about? Sometimes my parents were mean, like when they said, "No, you can't get a hamster. Remember what happened when you got one white mouse that turned out to be pregnant?" Sometimes they were okay, even sort of cool. But all that stuff people said about wonderful, it gave me a creepy feeling. Nobody talked to Zach about the wonderfulness of Mom and Dad. He was the normal kid in the family, the kid who could see like nearly everybody else. Wonderful had to do with me and Gordy. We weren't exactly the children people dreamed of getting when kids were handed out. People whispered about us. They thought we couldn't understand. It must have been such a shock. And they have no idea the cause. Parents weren't expected to rally after a blow like us. But there we were, one more back-to-school family at Tom McCann's. In Patterson, the classes on the first floor sorted us by our brands of specialness. There was a class for kids who'd had polio, and there were classes for kids who were deaf. I was in Miss Campbell's class for blind kids. I learned to read and write Braille, and in third grade, I started touch typing on a regular print typewriter. Summer was my very favorite time of year. Every summer, my family spent a month at Green Pond, a lake about an hour from Little Falls. The summer I was 10, Mom handled the logistics of getting us there. Dad came up later after work. The car was packed to the roof with suitcases, boxes, fishing poles, towels, blankets, and toys, and somehow 3 kids and the dog squeezed in among all the luggage. Our excitement burst forth in song. I'll see you in September. And you ain't nothing but a hound dog. When we began to climb Green Pond Road, the air grew cooler. Through the open windows, I smelled moist earth and pine needles. At the spot where branches met above the road, Zach cried, "We're going through Tree Tunnel." Then we were there, scrambling out of the car. Mom said, "Nobody goes in empty-handed." But once we dropped our bundles in the kitchen, it was, "Can we go fishing? Can we go swimming, please?" Mom said, "Not now. Go find something to do. Let me sort things out around here." Zach and I wandered outside looking for something to do. Zach said, "Let's climb up to the Blue Flag." Along the west shore of Green Pond, vast boulders were stacked one upon another where the great glacier dropped them 10,000 years ago. Generations of teenagers had climbed the rocks with cans of paint to leave messages. Betty loves Joe. Peppertown. Go Hornets. Long ago, someone had painted the blue flag far up near the top. I poked my head in the back door. "We're going up to the Blue Flag, okay?" Mom said, "Okay." Her voice was muffled behind the pantry door. Gordy called out, "Me too." We pretended we didn't hear him. I grabbed Zach's hand, and we made a dash for the West Shore path. Water lapped close on our left, and on our right, the rocks cast an echo with every step. Zach said, "There's a big rock in front of your right foot. Stand on that and pull yourself up onto the ledge. Hand, foot, hand, foot." We made our way up the rocks. The world dwindled down to Zach's instructions. Up with your right hand, over with your left foot, down a little more. There, that's it. Once Zach got stuck, and I reached down so he could grab onto my hand and pull himself up. It helped that I was taller, with longer legs and arms. We paused on a ledge to catch our breath. Zach said, "Copperheads live up here." He was right. Almost everyone got bit. I said, "Do you see any?" "I don't think so, but they kind of blend in." I took the next handhold gingerly, braced for a cold, scaly slither, the sting of fangs. But my hand found solid rock, nice and safe. I shouted, "Go away, snakes!" And we kept climbing. Foot, hand, foot, hand. At last, we found ourselves on a high, flat rock. Wind swept around us with no wall to hold it back. I said, "We're really high up." Zach said, "Right under the sky." "Where's the Blue Flag?" I crouched down and followed Zach's hand, but I couldn't make out the shape, the painted shape. It was okay, though. I knew we'd reached it. That day, I found out that getting down is a lot harder than climbing up. I clung by my hands with my legs flailing in empty air. In another moment, I'd fall into a field of bone-snapping, skull-cracking rocks. But Zach said, "Just let go, it's only about 4 inches." I let go and found myself upright and safe on a friendly ledge. Not far below, water lapped gently. Foot, hand, foot, hand. I stood on the flat of the meadow with sharp path. Rock walls flew above us. The lake rippled a welcome. We scampered back to the cottage. Mom was sweeping the front porch. "Where have you two been? I've been calling and calling you." "We did it. We climbed all the way." "All the way where?" "To the blue flag." "You did what?" "You said it was okay." "I never said that. I must have misheard you. That was not okay. Are you all right?" We were fine. We were exhilarated. Teenagers climbed up to the blue flag, and we did it all by ourselves. When Dad arrived that night, we told him all about it. We went out on the dock so he could look up and see where we'd been, and he said, "Wow." He kept saying, "It's not fair. I never get to have any fun." That week, the weather was beautiful. Wind laps between the docks and built a giant sand castle, and life was going to get even better. The Conovers were coming up for the weekend. They were old friends. Dad, 3 kids are. On Friday afternoon, we'd all go water skiing. But how would we entertain the Conovers on Saturday? I said, cookout maybe? Gordy said, "They'd like to go to the blue flag." All of us launched into a chant. "Blue flag, blue flag, blue flag." Mom said, "Well, it might be fun." Dad said, "Oh, why not?" Saturday morning, we all trooped along the West Shore path, 4 grown-ups and 6 kids, 2 of us blind, and I realized maybe it was true. Maybe Mom and Dad really were kind of wonderful. Because how many other parents would set out like this just for fun on a real adventure? So we headed up the rocks to the blue flag. And foot, hand, foot, hand. I met a lot of grown-ups by that time. The telephone. Talk about me right in front of me, as if I were 6 months old. "Would you like a snack? Does she need to go to the bathroom?" Most grown-ups would leave me in peace if I sat still. But as soon as I moved around, it was, "Where do you go? I'm coming. I don't want you getting hurt." Other kids got hurt with abandon. They slid down slides head first. They ran on wet floors. They pinched their fingers in door hinges. The grown-ups told them, "That'll teach you a lesson. Next time, be more careful." I wasn't allowed to learn the hard way. I was supposed to stay safe and quiet and spare them from worrying. By 5th grade, I no longer stayed in Miss Campbell's room all day. I had science and geography with the neighborhood kids up on the 2nd floor. I could answer questions about gravity and the capital of Arizona, but I was still an outsider. My home base was Miss Campbell's room down on the 1st floor. Then, at the end of 7th grade, I sensed that something was afoot. The grown-ups whispered possibilities. They could get her the books in Braille. She could type her assignments for the teachers. Maybe I could transfer to school in Little Falls for 8th grade. My friend Gayleen's father was the Little Falls school superintendent. I said, Gayleen, tell your dad to let me transfer. But it wasn't up to my parents or even the superintendent. The Board of Education got to weigh in, and other grown-ups could go to the meeting too. The whispers said, it won't work. Too much trouble. No. I was 4th generation Little Falls. Everybody knew my family, but I was still that kid who didn't fit, the kid who belonged someplace else. At 7 o'clock on a Thursday night, Mom and Dad set out for the Board of Education meeting. I read a book. I played Go Fish with Zach and Gordy. I waited. 7:45, 8 o'clock. How long could it take to say, okay, why not? Finally, after 9, Mom and Dad opened the back door. What happened? What did they say? Mom said, you're going to school in Little Falls in September. I clapped and cheered and jumped up and down, but Mom and Dad were quiet. Finally, Mom said, it was a long meeting. How come? Dad said, never mind, it's settled now. You'll show them. A few days later, I eavesdropped as Mom talked to my Aunt Shirley on the phone. They were hysterical. Yes, shouting and crying. 8th grade is such a special year, they said. These kids have been together since kindergarten. She'll need so much attention. Having her there will ruin the year for everybody. One woman even threatened to take us to court. Then Mom noticed me creeping closer and closer, and she changed the subject. So, we'll see you at the cookout Saturday. Tears? Court? Because of me? I hadn't done anything. But it wasn't about anything I had done. It was about what I might do in the future. It was about me, who I was. I'd have to be better than my best every day, so no one could say letting me go to school in Little Falls was a mistake. In 8th grade in Little Falls, I met the popular crowd. Karen reigned over their private corner of the schoolyard. I hovered on the fringes, trying to understand their inside jokes. A couple of times I added a comment, but they never seemed to hear me. Sue wasn't part of Karen's crowd, and she didn't seem to mind. Lucky for me, she became my best friend. We agreed we never wanted to be like Karen, giggling over nothing. How ridiculous. I told Sue, when I grow up, I'm going to be a writer. She said, me too. We became observers, collecting material. I listened wherever I went and filed away people's quirks and quandaries. Long afterward, pieces of that 8th grade year wove into a novel, but that comes later, with years of stories in between. There weren't any lawsuits. 8th grade went on with parties and dances and gossip, even though I was there. As far as I knew, I didn't ruin the year for anyone. I thought I understood the girls, and I made friends with several of them, but then there were the boys. By high school, boys were the essential element, like oxygen. When the girls hung out together, it was all about who winked at who asked who out, who was a creep, who was like to die for. Of course, some boys were outsiders. Byron Bentley talked too loud. Nobody laughed at his jokes. He couldn't live down getting blamed for the epidemic of head lice that struck the class back in second grade. People who lived through it still called him Cooties. Senior year, Byron bought a pair of tickets to the prom. He asked Sandy Jaworski, head of the cheering squad, but of course she had a date already. He lowered his sights and asked Bonnie Ballou, Boney Bonnie, they called her. She told him no, her family was moving to Schenectady. He asked Linda Cruz and Lori Samuelson and Skippy McGillivray. No, no, and no. Prom night was only 2 weeks away. 12 days. 10 days. If Byron asked me, what would I say? I didn't care about the stupid prom, but still. I hardly knew Byron, but maybe. With the prom 4 days off, Byron turned in his tickets. Not even Byron Bentley would stoop to asking me. Cross boys off the list. I'd go to college, I'd have good friends, I'd find a job, and I'd be fine. So, off and to Oberlin, tucked among the Ohio cornfields. Oberlin had poets and flautists and activists. People talked about ending the war in Vietnam, making a commitment and never selling out. I listened everywhere. In the dining room at May Cottage freshman year, I sat most nights at John Field's table. Over mystery meat and succotash, John hosted a nightly salon. He drew people into discussions that were lively and intelligent. Academic freedom, the Bergman Film Festival. John's table was Oberlin's version of Karen's In Crowd, not giggly and silly, but full of wit and passion. I was too shy to join in, but listening was good enough. I had a handful of wonderful friends, all of us introverts to varying degrees. If a party broke out in the dorm lounge, we retreated to somebody's room. We read haiku. We worked out guitar chords to Joni Mitchell songs. We talked about what we wanted in life and the things that scared us. Parties could go on without us. But suddenly it was senior year, and soon we'd be thrown out into the real world. I asked my friends, where do you meet people when you don't go to classes and live in a dormitory? Ellie said, at work maybe. Kathy suggested, you have to go to church, my mother says. I startled myself when I said, what if you want to meet guys? I haven't even figured that one out right here. Connie said, don't worry, things will work out. But I knew better. We need to branch out while we're here, get some real-world practice. My senior seminar split into small discussion groups. I was in group 3 with 5 other people, and one of them turned out to be John Field. Naturally, John took charge. He invited us to meet regularly at his place off campus. Once we got settled on couches and patches of floor, he greeted his way around the circle. Great to see you, Cheryl. How was Seattle? Hey, Steve, we missed you at the caucus. Then he came to me. Wait, I know you, don't I? I waited. Remind me, you're... So I told him. In that moment, I knew two things. Listening in silence was not good enough. And come what may, I would make John Field remember my name. A few days later, I heard John talking in the middle of a group outside King 106. I caught LBJ and making posters tonight. I said, "Hi, John," casually, just in passing. He didn't answer, but now I knew where he had a 10 o'clock class. I passed through the King lobby, and he'd be laughing or telling a story, and when I said, "Hi, John," sometimes he answered, "Hi." One day I told my friends, "There's a party in the lounge Saturday night. I think we better go." I thought the party would be a group project, a chance to practice mixing. But Saturday night, my friends were nowhere to be found. I thought, I can't face this alone. Okay, 10 minutes. Even I can handle 10 minutes. I knew every foot of the first floor lounge, but now the room was wiped out by the Rolling Stones at full blast. Someone had pushed back the rug. People must be dancing. The sofa was gone from its usual place. I hugged the wall to keep out of the way. How many more minutes? 8? 7? The Stones crashed to a close. Voices emerged as someone hunted for a fresh album. A hand grabbed my arm. "There's a seat over here." It was Joel from Modern Lit. He steered me toward a chair, but I resisted. This was a party. You were supposed to circulate. 6 more minutes. Joel said, "You want to dance then?" What did I know about dancing? But Joel wasn't going to ask me again. Sure, thanks. He took my hand. We maneuvered through a forest of shoulders and elbows into the middle of the room. "I've got sunshine on a cloudy day." Joel said, "Just move with the music. There's no right or wrong way." I knew there were right and wrong ways. Everybody was watching each other, following somebody's lead. I had to be the lead for myself. Bend. Girl. Get you a beer? Sure, thanks. He disappeared, handed me a frosty glass, and disappeared again. I had made a grave tactical error. People moved all around me, invisible in the din, bumping into someone, spilling beer on somebody. Talk about a disaster. I took cold sips so the glass wouldn't be so scary full. With many steps, I edged toward where a wall ought to be. Someone grabbed my arm, steered me to the right, I took the new direction, kept going, tried to hold the glass steady. My free hand encountered a table, and there was the front staircase. Rescue. How many minutes? 20? I went to the party. I did it once, and I could do it again. The semester wound to a close. Ahead stretched the holiday break. At the last session of Group 3, John asked, "Anybody need a ride to New York? I can take one more." I imagined myself sweeping across Pennsylvania with John and his crowd. Me, being part of the talk, the laughter, in the middle of it all. I had a ride lined up already, but people did change plans. "I'm going to New Jersey. You drop me off?" "Sure. I'll pick you up at your dorm Saturday morning, 8 o'clock. On Saturday morning, I dragged my suitcase downstairs and sat on the couch to wait. 8 o'clock. People straggled out the door, catching rides, collecting friends. 8:30. The house mother left, reminding me to lock up. 8:45. Pipes rattled. Floorboards creaked. John forgot. He drove off with a carload of friends and left me. What made me think I could join them? Now what? I'd take the bus to Cleveland, catch a Greyhound to Newark. Feet stamped across the porch. I bounded to the door, and there was John. "Sorry, I'm running late. Were you waiting all lonesome and forlorn?" I clambered into the back beside Ben and Steve. Ernie and Rebecca sat up front. Oakland faded behind us, and we headed toward the Pennsylvania line. Nan would be sister's maid of honor. Rebecca had to tell her parents she was dropped out. I cornered the back seat. This is my place. People's stories. We obeyed both sides out and joined in the chorus. I said, "From both sides now." When the song was over, I saw the radio. "Keep singing. What else do you know?" Verses of Rebecca Long, Broadway musicals, and then started on rounds. I taught him the one about music shall live. He turned to it began. White sand and gray sand. We stopped for coffee. No, yet. We stopped for sandwiches. Rebecca drove for a while and took a wrong turn. We pulled over so she and John could study the road map, and then we were off on our way again. Pennsylvania slid away behind us. From New York, the radio chanted WABC. I called from Howard Johnson's on the New Jersey Turnpike. John told Dad the exit where he'd drop me off. 40 minutes later, I gave John my share of gas money, and with a quick clasp of hands, we said goodbye. There really was life after Oberlin. I'd worked one summer at a day treatment center for former patients from a state hospital. The work intrigued me. I put aside my dream of writing and enrolled in social work school. Classes were on campus during 3 summers, and we had full-time field placements in between. I got lots of real-world work experience, plus the adventure of living on my own, finding an apartment, cooking, cleaning, paying the bills, even meeting guys. The year I lived in Boston, doing my field placement at Mass General Hospital, I hung out with a folk singer called Wolf. Wolf played in coffee houses on Charles Street or strolled through the Common singing for change. We collected friends like Mike the bartender and Jolly Roger and Rosemary, who said she was a witch. Meanwhile, I saw patients and presented at case conferences and worked at becoming a professional. I loved Boston. I wanted to find a job there and stay forever. My final summer on campus, I put together my resume with all my training and work experience. I sent it to every hospital and agency in the Boston area. I got called in for one interview after another, but when they met me, they said, "We'll keep your application in our files. If anything opens up, we'll let you know. We had a position, but it's been filled." The summer was almost over when I got a call at the dorm. It was Helga Aberdeen at Mallory Mental Health. "I have your resume here, and I'm very impressed. Can you come in at 3 o'clock this afternoon for an interview?" I was out in Northampton. Mallory was in Belmont, somewhere outside Boston. Northampton to Boston was 2 hours, and then buses to the suburbs. Already it was 10 in the morning. "I'll be there." It was Friday. Lots of people drove into Boston for the weekend. I headed down the hall, knocking on doors. Nancy was leaving after lunch. I promised to pay gas and tolls, plus give her $10 if she'd leave in 15 minutes. She welcomed the money. At 1 o'clock, Nancy dropped me off at my first bus stop. 2 buses later, the driver said, "Mallory, I don't go that far. It's about a mile up the road. You gonna be okay?" "Up the road which way?" "Oh, just keep going, you'll see it. Okay, thanks." I stepped out into the blazing August sun. There was no sidewalk. I followed the edge of the road with my cane, crunching gravel. 1:40, 2 o'clock. Cars whipped past me, scary close. I felt dizzy with the heat. A car slowed and stopped. "You okay?" "How much farther to Mallory?" "Wow, it's a ways yet. I'm going up there to see my son. Can I give you a lift?" Never, ever get into a car with a stranger. "Thank you, that would be really help." I climbed in and she told me about her son on L6. I revived a little in the breeze through the open window. She let me out in front of the social service building and told me Helga Aberdeen was on the 3rd floor. On the 3rd floor, someone was typing. I said I had an appointment for an interview. The typist told me to wait. It was 2:55. I sat on a vinyl couch and dumped pebbles out of my shoes. I breathed slow, calming breaths. Maybe, please, maybe this would be the one. This was interview number 14. The door opened. I heard a long pause. Are you here for an interview? Yes, Miss Aberdeen. I won't waste my time or yours. Because of your handicap, I'm not going to hire you. It was the cane. The cane spooked them every time. You set time aside. At least we should talk. Fine, but you won't change my mind. I followed her into her office, and with my cane, the chair. You said I have. My experience at Mass makes me very well suited for Mallory. You would have to be on to this interview on time, all the way from Northampton. 200 applicants for this position. I'm not going to hire someone with a problem, and I can choose from 199 applicants who don't have problems. Do what? Just won't know about them when they walk in the door. Don't get snippy, young lady. You're going to change my mind. Not me. There as she said, associate the blind. Stay in Patterson. Keep to your own corner. There's no room for you in our world. By graduation, most of my classmates' jobs went out. I went cringing home to Little Falls. I needed to move out of my parents' house. I needed an apartment and a paycheck, and life. What I was facing was called discrimination. Organizations that fought against that. I called the ACLU. Sorry, we only handle discrimination cases involving race, religion, gender, and ethnic origin. Disability? Oh, we can't help you. You'll have to change the law. My piles of job listings. I copied down information in braille, page after whole page. I sent my resume to New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, DC, even Denver. Every city that had good public transportation. The job announcement from University Settlement House in New York said, they need someone who spoke Spanish. I had 4 years of Spanish in high school, and my teacher was excellent. I sent off my resume, and 6 days later, the director called me for an interview. I took the bus from Little Falls into New York, 40 minutes, a journey from one world into another. A cab brought me to the settlement house on the Lower East Side. I went up some steps into a room, a foyer full of yelling kids and running feet. A guy shouted, "Hilda, quítate, ya te dije que no." He turned to me. "Who are you looking for?" "Ernie Greisman." "He's the boss, man, up on 5. Looks like the elevator's working, the light's on." It was a lot quieter on the 5th floor. A woman passed in the hall and directed me to Ernie Greisman's office. I heard voices behind the closed door, so I waited outside. After a while, the door opened. "I mean it, Ernie. We gotta move on this. You know who we're dealing with. There's reality and there's the city of New York." They said goodbye, and Ernie Greisman noticed me. "Sorry, it's a little hectic around here. Come on in." I braced for the apologies, the regrets about how this just wouldn't work out, how I wasn't a good fit. "There's a chair on your left. Okay, I've got your... You... I dated went to Oberlin. She lived in a dorm called Hills. They took her out there. Where I lived, we used to say the ghost of Gray Gables was across the street." The door banged open. "Hey, Ernie, you seen my sister?" "Lourdes? Downstairs. Pete's teaching her diagram sentences." "She was supposed to go straight home and watch the..." "Oh, what did I tell you about knocking?" "You said do it." Now, where were we? "You interned at General. That's been waiting." "Oh, it was. I had every kind of patient. One day a week I was on just walking." Excuse me a moment. Come in. Woman. "I hate to bother you, but Gusto hasn't gotten rid of his chicken in the basement, and the inspector's coming tomorrow." "You're the only one he'll listen to." The door closed. Now, we were saying the walk-in service. Oh, it means a lot. If you come with us, we'll be in consultation. We are mental clinic. Anybody can come in for consultation, right? The settlements neighborhood. What people need. Programs, sí, bastante. All thump. There was as grind just to show faster off the field. The leaked rain the other day. There was another knock on the door. That you went for the next 2 hours. Finally, Ernie Greisman said, I said, "Oh, yes, yes, I do." I could tell the settlement house was open to everyone. Welcome was its mission. Maybe I had found my place in the very real world. On his way down to give Gusto an ultimatum about the fighting cocks, Ernie Greisman went downstairs with me and helped me catch a cab. As I climbed in, he called, "Oberlin forever." 3 days later, he offered me a job. I'm glad I can tell you about Ernie Greisman. That's his real name. I wouldn't change it for anything. My family helped me move into my East Village apartment. It was just the block from the Hells Angels clubhouse. Their bikes lined their side of the street. Once my boxes were heaped in the living room, we took a drive past the settlement house a few blocks away. And said, "There are 2 cars sitting on the sidewalk, wheels right off." I said, "I think I just witnessed a drug deal." Something passed real fast from one guy's hand to another. There were That's a steel band out there. Mom said, do not roll the windows down. But she added, Settlement House is a beautiful old building. It looks very much loved. What I remember most about my years at the settlement are the people. I remember Hilda, who was almost 13, stored plastic bags stuffed with her belongings in my office closet. I remember Mrs. Hernandez, who was afraid her children wouldn't respect her unless she learned to read. There was Frankie, who found his sister's body in the dumpster. And there was Miriam, who took care of 4 younger siblings when their mother went to prison. The kids who came in for counseling knew too much about rats and knives and needles, and cracked jokes, told stories, fought with their friends, and made up like kids do everywhere. I'd been at the settlement for 2 years when I crossed paths with Adrienne Ash. Adrienne was with me in Miss Campbell's class back in Patterson. So she too had a job in New York, working with a tenants' rights organization. Both of us had defied rules that said we couldn't work, that we had nothing to contribute. Adrienne was the smartest kid in Miss Campbell's class, and the bossiest. She hadn't changed. You've got to come to our meeting Sunday. We're rounding up all the blind people we can find in the city. Why would I want to find other blind people? I'd carved a place for myself in the real world. There was no going back. But Adrienne wouldn't give up. I spent a year looking for a job. Once I offered to work for 3 months without pay so they'd see what I could do. They still said no. How about you? I told about Helga Aberdeen and all those other interviews, one after another. She said, and they can get away with that. It's perfectly legal. So what's this meeting about? New York has a human rights law. It says you can't discriminate in hiring. You got it. We're going to make them add disability. Be there Sunday. That Sunday, for the first time since Patterson, I was in a room full of blind people. But this time we were together by choice, to strategize, to gather strength, to fight back. They'd already drafted the disability clause and even found a sponsor in the state legislature. Now, we needed to make phone calls, write letters, visit reps in their offices. We needed to make them understand that we deserved the same rights as everyone else. I typed piles of letters, carried them in bundles to the post office. I made phone calls between my appointments at work. I went to rallies with people who had other disabilities, polio survivors, people with cerebral palsy, deaf people who talked to me through interpreters. More and more lawmakers signed on to our bill. Finally, we only needed the governor's signature to become law. The governor was Nelson Rockefeller, name and money. His money meant power. Our bill landed on his desk. Days passed. Weeks. Rockefeller didn't sign. He didn't even comment. Rumors reached us. Business owners were pushing back. They always had the freedom to discriminate. Nobody was going to tell them they to hire cripples and people who couldn't even see. If they had their way, the governor would let people die. Adrienne said, it's time time for a demonstration. Been demonstrations back at I'd marched on campus against the war. I'd even marched on the Pentagon. But I had never imagined a demonstration like this one. We arrived in Albany by the busload with our canes and service dogs, our wheelchairs and braces and crutches. Someone invited the residents of a state institution, and by a miracle, half a dozen were allowed to join us. One man asked me to help him put on his sandwich board. He struggled with his words, but I understood him when he said, "It's about time, don't you think?" Some of us marched with monitors shouting directions. Some of us rolled in wheelchairs. Some signed to each other as they paced along. Our placards read, "One world for all of us." We chanted, "Equal access, equal rights." The press never saw anything like this. A reporter interviewed some of the organizers, including Adrian, for a story in the New York Times. Somewhere in one of the photos was a bit of my face. That Friday, Governor Rockefeller signed our bill. I helped change the law. Back at the settlement house, Ernie Griesme stopped me in the foyer. "I saw your picture in the paper, giving the governor hell, huh?" I guess it worked. He finally signed our bill. Ernie said, "Next time they try to cut our funding, you can lead the charge." Side was a gateway. Newcomers struggled and gained a footing and moved away. It was a gateway for my colleagues, too. One after another, they left for better paying jobs and homes in the suburbs. One day, Helen announced, "I'm going to work at City College. I'll be heading their counseling service." She distributed her caseload among the rest of us, the ones who weren't yet moving on. She told me, "George wants you to be his new social worker. He told me, she's blind, so she won't be able to find another job. She'll never leave." George was 12. What did he know? I was here because I loved my work. I was making a difference. But suppose George was right. Suppose I was afraid to search for work again, law or no law. University settlement didn't pay much, but we got 4 weeks of vacation a year. I'd been there 4 years when a friend told me about San Miguel de Allende in central Mexico. The Instituto Allende was an English language school that offered creative writing workshops. I never stopped collecting stories, writing down bits and pieces. Here was my chance to write for 4 whole weeks. I signed up for a fiction writing class and boarded a plane for. On my first Monday in San Miguel, I walked down the hill to the Instituto. Everything in San Miguel was uphill or down. My writing workshop was all about words. The more words we shared, the more I got to know my classmates. Clement was writing a novel about a biker gang, but his Harvard education got in the way, and his bikers kept saying things like, "Indubitably." Marnie's memoir was about her mother, a dentist who operated a numbers racket from her consulting room. Dick was working on a children's book about a homeless dog that brings 3 lonely people together. Clement introduced me to Elsa and Xenia, who lived up the street from the house where I rented a room. Their door was never locked, and they invited me to drop by any time. We were foreigners in this enchanting town. My new friends were here until they finished their novel, or until their money ran out, or maybe they were here forever. I was just a 4-week visitor. My days were ticking down. One afternoon, I dropped by Elsa's and Xenia's and found half a dozen people under the pecan trees in their garden. Clement said, "Let's do something dreadfully expat and order pizza." He headed out to Mamma Mia's, San Miguel's only pizza emporium. Elsa beside me. Why? And Elsa wanted to know why. Oh, responsibilities and all that. And Elsa said, why? I just walk away from everything. Why? Elsa wandered off, and I sat thinking, why? 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 I loved my work. If I walked, find, could I find another job at all? Remember George. She's blind, so she won't be able to find another job. She'll never leave. I wasn't the kind of person who finds a safe niche and hunkers down forever, was I? I could stretch my savings for a year, maybe even longer. After that, anything might happen by then. Now was my chance. The door banged open, and was back with the pizza, and my life would never be the same. Back in New York, I broke the news to my colleagues. They were surprised, dismayed. They said they missed me a lot. I knew I'd miss them too. Telling my colleagues, he'll pick up her plastic, moved on. I should have guessed. When I told Dad said, you won't have the Hells Angels neighbors anymore. Welcomed me back. And quickly it became my home. I lived in a community of writers. Friends knocked on my door to read their latest poem or their opening chapter. At parties, people took turns telling stories. I started work on a novel, drawing on some of those stories I collected back in 8th grade. I wrote about leaving the class in Patterson and attending school in Little Falls. Dick Stein, the guy working on the dog story, told everyone I was writing the most publishable novel in San Miguel. I stretched my savings for a year, and then another. I finished my novel and sent it to Houghton Mifflin. 3 months later, it came back. Nice work, but sorry, no. I couldn't wait forever, collecting rejection slips. I'd have to go back to New York, back to resumes and interviews. If I was lucky, I'd go back to 9 to 5. Elsa said, you know, Dick Stein told me he's in love with you. What? He's kind of shy, but he's a great guy. But I'm going back to New York to look for a job. And of course, Elsa said, why? I knew that Dick bought El News, the English language paper, in the plaza called the Jardin every day at noon. I'd walk past his favorite bench, not so different from passing King 106 back in my Oberlin days. Dick would call me over to join him. He read the crossword clues out loud, and we'd work the puzzle together. Most days, we'd find some place to buy a couple of tacos. Evenings, he'd knock on my door, and we'd go for beers at La Fragua, then listen to the mariachis in the Jardin. We started to feel like a couple, but my funds kept dwindling. One day, Xenia said, "There's this woman named Margarita. People say she's a white witch. They say she helps people out." I wanted to meet this Margarita and write an article about her. Maybe she would give me that first publication I needed. Xenia and I hiked out into the campo. Roosters crowed and burros brayed. Margarita lived in a 2-room adobe hut from another world. No electricity, no running water. We joined the long line of people waiting outside. Nearly all of them were women, most with children. They waited patiently and went in one by one. Maybe Margarita wouldn't want to be interviewed for a Sunday supplement up in El Norte. Like everyone else in line, I needed to ask her for help. I stepped through a swinging curtain, and Margarita showed me to a 3-legged stool. ¿Qué necesita, mi hija? To doing work, mi hija. When so do you no do you ever hear a clap of thunder that no one thinks so? Oh. Hija, to do your right. Margarita was right. I needed to stay in San Miguel. I wasn't ready to go back to social work. I needed to keep writing and to spend more time with Dick to see if we might work out. Somehow, I'd figure out a way to stay on. Then, miraculously, an opportunity dropped into my hands. A woman in town told me she wanted to start a school for blind children. Would I like to help her? I'd never taught. After Patterson, I was skeptical about special schools. But blind kids in San Miguel were begging in the streets. We had to start somewhere. People donated money. The library let us use a room. And so we started El Centro de Crecimiento, the Center for Growing. That summer, the Dial Press accepted my novel. All of a sudden, I was a real writer. When I wasn't busy with my students, I worked on my second book. Dick and I shared an old house with giant bougainvilleas in the patio. We didn't collaborate, but we commiserated about our writing projects. When friends dropped by at mealtimes, there was always plenty of food to go around. Eventually, though, we were ready to move on. Dick and I both had book contracts. Maybe we could live on our savings, live on our writing up in the States. We decided to find out. We settled in Chicago, Dick's hometown. It had all the buses and subways I could wish for. We kept on writing. We raised a wonderful daughter, Jana, and took her to San Miguel every summer so she could learn Spanish. I wasn't teaching blind children anymore, but there was plenty of work to be done here in the States. We had laws on the books now, but blind people still struggled to find jobs. A lot of blind kids weren't even being taught Braille. In the National Federation of the Blind, I found people of like mind fighting for better opportunities, better lives. The years rolled by. Jana grew up and moved out on her own. Mom and Dad got older, more feeble. Then, within a span of 2 years, both of them were gone. Zach and Gordon and I sorted through their apartment, remembering and saying goodbye. Sometimes, from this distance, old stories have a new resonance. Not long ago, I got an amazing update on Karen. Yes, that Karen. She became a doctor. She studied a condition called Reye's syndrome that killed hundreds of children every year. She found out that it's a severe reaction to aspirin. We don't give aspirin to kids anymore. Dr. Karen Starko, the queen of my 8th grade class, has saved thousands of lives. I've never been so delighted to be proven wrong about someone. As the years slid by, I thought of my years in San Miguel, in New York, back at Oberlin. Sometimes I remembered John Field, and I wondered who he had become. If our paths ever crossed, would he remember my name? Then, on a Friday in May, I found myself walking down College Street again, attending my 50th Oberlin reunion. I collected my event schedule and my name tag and settled into a very contemporary dorm. It even had co-ed bathrooms. On Saturday, Ellie, Connie, Kathy, and I sat for hours, the old gang together again. We caught up on husbands and children, work and health and retirement. The real world had been good to all of us. On Sunday morning, I was standing at a sink in the bathroom, about to brush my teeth, when the door opened. A familiar voice said, "Hi, it's John." And in case I wasn't sure, "John Field, may I give you a hug?" I hadn't put my name tag on yet. I said, "Do you remember my name?" "Of course, you're Deborah." I held out my arms and I said, "Then, of course, you can give me a hug." After a flurry of greetings, he said, "Did you really think I wouldn't remember you?" This may sound weird, but you didn't remember me in our psych seminar. What psych seminar? When we were seniors. But we met first in the dining room at May Cottage freshman year. I didn't eat at May. I was assigned to Talcott. I started to argue, but time was short. I decided to make you remember me. I kind of stalked you. I'd walk by and try to get you to say hi. You did? You're kidding. Remember that drive home for the Christmas break? 6 of us packed into your car? That old clunker I had, it never could have made a trip like that. Oh, but it did. And there was this crazy little maneuver getting my dad to pick me up at some off-ramp on the turnpike. I didn't take you all the way home. I should have. This all makes me unhappy. No, it was a fun trip. You taught me a song. White sand and gray sand, who will buy my white sand? Who will buy my gray sand? My mother taught me that song. She didn't teach me many songs, but she taught me that one. Then I knew he believed my story, even if he didn't remember any of the pieces. He said, "It's around." I know. Sing it with us, please. White sand and gray sand, white sand and gray sand, who will buy my gray sand? Who will buy my gray sand? I said, "You were a presence back then, and I was kind of a mouse. When you didn't know my name, I knew I better change my life. Then I was part of your journey. Oh yes, in a good way. That makes me happy." Me too. I never thought we'd be having this conversation in the bathroom. As I come to the end of my story, I circle back to where it begins. There's a saying that parents should give their kids roots and wings. I'm grateful my parents did that for me. When they started their long life together, my mom and dad didn't know they shared a rare recessive gene that would affect 2 of their children. But maybe they knew they shared something else, a spirit of adventure. When life greeted them with the unexpected, they rose to the challenge. Where some would have cried, they discovered laughter and a path through the tangles. They never told me, "That will be too hard for you, too dangerous." They never said, "Stay with us, we'll keep you safe." They stepped back and let me have adventures of my own. Sometimes people tell me, "You're so courageous, such an inspiration. You've done so much and you're blind." Okay, blindness threads all through my story. It's a part of who I am. But really, mine is a story like anyone else's. We all have challenges and adventures. Sometimes we're hurt and disappointed, and sometimes we discover joy. Through it all, we find our way onward. Hand, foot, hand, foot, hand.
We will now take a 15-minute intermission before beginning our talk back. Please return in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah? Oh, sorry, everyone. Yeah, that was beautiful. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for coming. For those of you who have never been to a post-show talkback with a piece that is in development, this part of the process is very critical. It's important. It's also maybe one of my favorite parts. It's very also joyful because we get to share with the artist, in this case, Deb, our experience of her work and where we leaned in. And then she will take all of this stuff with her back to the writing room and work on whatever next draft is next. So I'm going to ask you to all think about places that you leaned in. Go ahead, come on in. We good? Places that you leaned in, things that you'll remember. Yes, those kinds of things. And I'm going to say off the bat, I've seen a couple of drafts of this piece, and I just want to commend you again, Deb, on your voice. Your writing voice, your artistic voice, your performance voice is so strong. And the way that you weave your story is so compelling to me, and the way it is both memorial, it's political, it's funny, it's filled with pathos and arcs, and I mean, you had me in tears several times, and I know this piece. So I just want to commend you for that. And from here, I'm going to just open it up. And please, it's a little bright. So some of you in the back, if you raise your hand and I don't see you, just be bold and say, hi, I'm here.
I would also like to take a quick second to say, if you're here in the audience, when you're going to ask a question, please raise your hand, and one of our ushers is going to bring a mic over to you to make sure the folks at home can hear what it is you're saying. And folks at home, I'm not just looking at my phone. I have the YouTube chat up here so that if you have any comments or questions, we can bring those into the conversation as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Glenn. So, anyone want to start?
Down here.
Down here?
Riley is on their way.
Hi, I'm Steve Hastelis from Chicago, and active in the National Federation of the Blind and the Illinois affiliate and the Chicago chapter. And Debbie, your story about the blind and people with disabilities petitioning the governor to sign the expansion of the New York Human Rights Act to include people with disabilities reminded me of similar work that we did in the early to mid-'70s, culminating in the expansion of the Illinois Human Rights Act to cover people with disabilities. I know about that because I testified at the Illinois General Assembly House Human Resources Committee in, April or May of 1973. So thank you.
Thank you. Other things you'll remember, things that took your attention.
Well, I rarely see something where I lean in the whole time. It's like, where did you lean in? Well, I never leaned out once. Right. And that partly is your delivery and your voice, but you're a writer, and it shows, and the phrasing is lovely, and it carries you along like a little chariot while you're leaning in so much. So I really loved it.
Echoing Suzanne, with whom I've been in many classes and workshops, including some with Deborah, what I found really extraordinary and fascinating, having heard parts of it, is how well it all got woven together, and how characters early in the story, or people you knew, did come back. The girl that, who was the head of the in crowd coming back as a figure. It was so well crafted, and I think that's what makes it so remarkably interesting, besides the compelling themes throughout, some that have to do with disability, but some that just have to do with life. Well done, 4 stars, 5 thumbs up.
Absolutely. I love your technique of micro and macro. The whole piece moves through this very, even the hand, foot, your title, right? It's the placement of a part of the body, right? But then, that's so many micro moments, and then the pulling out. It's very cinematic, actually, and then the pulling out into macro, almost cinematic, the protests and journeys to get to job interviews, and that technique, that artistic technique, is extremely effective, and you do it really, really well. So, other things. Yes, Noah. Oh, so sorry. Yes.
Thank you for saying micro and macro. It's the first time I've heard them together, and I think I understand it now. And yes, you're right. You're a beautiful storyteller. You are a beautiful storyteller in the writing, in the voice, in the body.
Yeah.
Hi. First of all, wonderful work, Deborah. What I really appreciated in this piece was how every detail was given enough focus that when you revisited them later on, we immediately recalled what you were talking about. Case in point, calling back to Karen, I was like, oh yeah, you talked about that earlier. I totally remember that. And I think that happened in multiple places throughout this solo piece, and it was very, very well constructed in that regard.
Yeah.
Deborah, this is Arlene. Hi. One of the things that is truly special about this particular piece is the multisensory details that you bring into it that are very different from what most of us experience. You wrote a lot about sound and about feel and things that made me experience more what you were feeling. So I thought that was beautifully done. I also like the fact that some of this play was very writerly, in beautiful phrasing, in spectacular language. And then there were other parts, the dialogue, that were very conversational. And I think in a solo show, that's a difficult road to manage, and I think you did a beautiful job. And I don't know how you chose these stories to go together, because I know you have a library catalog full of them from our class. But I am absolutely so moved and thrilled, and applaud your tenacity, because you and I have been together for so long in the writing of it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes. Amelia Marie. Oh.
Thank you, Deb. It's Nina. One thing is that when I first met you, Deb, it was in that writing workshop at Esalen, and I was so drawn to exactly what you were talking about, Arlene, which is the use of other sensory details, when so often all we hear in people's writing are visual details. I do want to bring something up which was kind of left hanging. When you talked about Karen, I was waiting for you to talk about a couple of the other key people. And you did beautifully kind of, when you were talking about resonances with the past, you did go to some, some other memories, but not specifically involving people so much. And I just kind of was waiting for maybe like that kind of rule of three, that, there was Karen and there was this and there was that. We did bring John back into it, which was great. But it would have been nice to hear that, though I don't know what you'd want to cut because everything else so perfectly belongs there.
I think for me, it was nice to hear Karen, but for me it was the John. It was the encounter, which really is a dramatic encounter. I really loved, that was probably my favorite Circle Back. So I just want to put it in, yeah.
This is Amelia Marie. One part that I really enjoyed about your overall piece is that you didn't make, it is a trend that I see in a lot of disability theater as I'm starting to read a lot of it, is you didn't make excuses or explain the experience of blindness like preemptively to the audience, like defensively almost. You just told the stories, which I appreciated, and then people started to laugh and engage, whether they knew you personally or whether it was a particularly funny line. I think one of my favorites was other kids got hurt with abandon. And I think that was a really good one. Or like this sardonicness of sorted by brands of specialness or wonderful parents. Like this sardonicness is really great. And it did that without having to be defensive about it.
Round two. The other theme I think that that's in it for me is the role of your parents, and you come back to the end because good parenting is really important and can probably help people with what are recognized as disabilities overcome them. Bad parenting can make life very difficult for people who don't appear to have disabilities. And I think it's one of the themes in your story is how important your parents were. And I'm glad that you bring that up at the end. I mean, it comes out in the school board meeting and all of that, but really,
I also want to, I also want to acknowledge the skill or the technique. When you start, I hear the voice of a child. I really love hearing the language and the voice and the coming of age, the different cycles of the coming of age. And then you bring us to your present. And so we, in a matter of a little over an hour, have gone with you from childhood to your present day. And it's quite, again, the storytelling is wonderful and it's kind of magical. Yeah, and I want to leave a moment. I mean, Kate, I'd love to hear from you and maybe what it was like. And Deb, if there's anything that you want to say or ask as well, I want you to know you're going to have a minute too, because I know it's one thing to write it. It's one thing to be in Arlene's fantastic class on Zoom. It's another thing to be in front of an audience and performing. So if there's anything you want to share about that. But Kate, can I get you to share some?
Well, sure. The first thing I just want to make you all aware is that Deb and I had maximum 6 hours together working on this. So the work that you saw today is a real testament to what a strong performer Deb has discovered within herself. That was done with very little rehearsal. This was the only time we were ever in the space. And for me, it was a real gift from Glenn and also from everybody here, and especially from Deb, to have the opportunity to work with somebody who is blind, which was a new experience for me. And Deb was so generous with me in answering any questions that I might have about how best to work with her. And I want to just sort of, talking about micro, macro, sort of zoom out a little bit and say, opportunities like this are so important for all of us to have the chance to have a little bit more of our ignorance taken away. And I really value that experience as part of what I had the opportunity to do here, which was to learn or begin to learn how it might look like to collaborate more extensively with Deb. Like when we were working together and I was saying I really wanted her to move her all around the stage. And this is what we set on, just the more smaller movement that we did today was something that we settled on because of the live stream component. But I'm hoping that we get to collaborate together again on this for more of a run. And one of the things that Deb suggested to me, which I never would have thought of, which was, she was like, well, if you want me to move around the stage, I would suggest that we lay down carpet runners so that I can. Do you want to sort of say what you were saying about that, or should I just keep going?
You got it. You're going.
Okay. Which was a revelation to me, and all of the sudden, I could think about all of the movement that would be possible in a space if there were just textures on the floor that could help Deb know where she was in space and where she, and obviously she's very capable of knowing where she is in space. That's not a problem. But the addition of an idea like different textures or carpet on the floor to be thinking of when I'm thinking of staging, and then to be thinking about what might that look like, and so it was just like a whole new, for me, like the design, like all sorts of, and then also, as was mentioned before, all the sound that is in the piece, so that if we were to go for a more full production, the sound design, all the music that's mentioned, the sounds of summer when you're getting to, it's Green Pond, right? Those sounds, like can just be a tapestry, a layer of sounds that then would become part of the design of the production. So I think for me, a lot of this experience was thinking about how much more I want to do with it. And how exciting it was to work with Deb and how much I loved the story. And the other day, when we were rehearsing at her house, I was sitting there weeping away when she's like going like towards the end part, because it's just so moving, and it's so funny because I have to be like, I'm crying like right now, you know. So it's just been a really enlightening experience, and I'm aware of how much more I have to learn. But I'm really hoping that we can continue to collaborate together and see what more we can do with this.
Thank you. Me too. I love it. So I'm just blown away by the support from all of you. Having people come out today on a Saturday afternoon and spend time listening and sharing and being my support team, because I've worked on this for a long time, as you gather, and I've gotten tremendous amount of help from Arlene and Carson and Kate and so many others, people I've been in workshops with, and I know this is still a work in progress, and there's some more fine-tuning and polishing for it to go forward, but this is such a boost, so much encouragement to hear all these kind thoughts from all you guys. And I, of course, welcome any sort of constructive criticism that you also might wish to share. There are bound to be some things where you feel like that's too much of such and such, or maybe we need a little more of such and such, or something that just didn't quite ring true. So I need to know about those things too.
Deb,
Yeah.
Nina again. I just want to tell you that in San Miguel, there is now a series of one-person shows.
Oh,
And
wow.
In San Miguel, and we did see one of them, and We should get you
Yeah,
connected up with
I'll
the people
say.
running it because,
I'll say.
because how much more perfect could this be?
Right, talk about full circle.
Wow.
Wow.
Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah. Nina discovered San Miguel because I told her about it. Now she goes every winter.
This is Suzanne. I liked seeing a variation in posture, you know, where you had a chair and you took various postures, standing, sitting, etc. And it was, I mean, I don't know if I could say it's fun, but it's interesting to watch you negotiate that. And it gives a little addition to, you know, you're telling us what all this feels like. But the only thing that was missing, I found myself eagerly, not just because I was taking pictures, which I'll share with you, but eagerly awaiting your smile because you have such a brilliant smile. And you know, it kept coming in, but I would have loved to have seen a lot more of it. Also, you know, blind or not, all of us have a reading face that goes with when we're reading a piece rather than knowing it by heart, which you could hardly know that well by heart. But we all have a reading face. And so you when I see you now speaking, you'll have many expressions flitting across your face, many more than when you were reading. So it's like, you know, if you can let yourself show on your face more what you're feeling.
I'm going to address that.
Okay.
Okay, so, and that gets into development because obviously this is the first time you've performed this, right? And
I've performed little pieces of it in the past.
but I mean,
this
on
is
a
the first time I've done the whole
all together in front of and what I was going to say about when you said, you know, there's going to be rewrites and there's going to be nipping, you know, there's going to be, my sense about this from all my years of working in this field, you're at the point now where it's about getting it on its feet. You don't, you know, this is the kind of rewriting that happens in, Kate's nodding her head because this is in rehearsal. This is, right, Arlene? Right, Glenn? I mean, that your piece right now is at a point where you don't need any more rewriting on the page. This is now a solo show where writers, playwrights, performers performing their own work, where you are on your feet and you are working with an experienced director and or a dramaturg and or a mentor in the room, and it's on your feet where you start to figure out where it might need a little more, a little less, because I want to remind everyone, playwriting, solo show is a very particular kind of writing, right? Because it's ultimately three-dimensional, it's embodied, it's in real time and in real space. So I just want to say, as you graduate from our Access program, you are ready literally for the next stage. This is all about whatever happens next is in some sort of rehearsal process, and we can talk about that. I think that I'm going to take this moment now to close up this part of this section where we're talking about Deb's work. I know Kate needs to take off. Her family has been waiting for her for a little while. So we're going to give Kate a big round of applause. Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
And before I pass it over to, bye, sweetie, to Glenn and Arlene, I actually want to invite in our next and introduce you all to our next Access Fellow, Kennedy Dawson Healy, who is in the house. And I'm going to read from her, just to give you a brief description of who she is. She has a beautiful webpage and many amazing works of art to recommend her. But Kennedy Dawson Healy, they, is a fat, queer, crip medium maker, originally from Omaha, Nebraska. Now based in Chicago, Kennedy makes work focused on disability, accessibility, care, abolition, sexuality, and representation. They are the founder of Crip Crap, a media company that makes media about disability by and for disabled people. She edits Crip Crap's blog, spoiler alert, and the co-production and co-host of Crip Crap, the podcast alongside Justin Cooper. So Kennedy has a musical that she's interested in working with us on, and so many other things. And we welcome Kennedy in with open arms and great and wonderful expectation and joy. So, thank you.
Kennedy.
Alrighty, I'm going to hand this to you, Arlene. We are going to turn the conversation towards a few minutes talking about the overall project of Keep It Going and the work that needs to be done within accessibility in theater. So I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the challenges that we face today. Obviously, we already discussed the issue with the captioning, which I would love to get some general feedback on. Thank you, folks, for coming. We also, for those of us who were backstage and at home, we were having some issues with the live stream with the audio that we were combating during it. I don't know if any of you can tell, my hair was quite a bit longer when this afternoon began. A lot of it is now missing. But like I said at the beginning, this is a part of my education in arts administration and a part of the research that needs to be done in order to figure out how we can best do this. We can see some larger organizations with big budgets are currently doing, lots of work that comes with the big fancy captioning screens along the back with someone hired in every night to do the captions on the spot. For those of us who are on this scale, that's not always going to be feasible, and so figuring out what it is that we're capable of doing is incredibly important. And so when it comes to this sort of work, I just really want to highlight the fact that while these challenges were frustrating for today, they were also things that we are hopefully going to be able to learn from to do better in the future. But I think they also highlight the fact that significantly more funding and work needs to be put into accessibility than currently is. This project is one that largely is done off of the work of folks within my circle, either donating their time or people within my personal life sponsoring with additional money or what have you, which is great, and I'm so privileged and so thankful that we are able to do that for a project like this. But the fact that this sort of work is not able to be part of the baseline for how we approach theater and part of the conversation from the very first rehearsal is where we can see the issue. So I want to make sure that as we are thinking about what we can take from today onward, we're also thinking about what are the elements of access that we can be incorporating into every stage of theater evolution. And so I'm going to pass it over real quick to Arlene, who is the founder of the Access Fellowship here, because you have truly been such a fabulous mentor for me even before all this project work began. And yeah, I think the work you do is just so incredible and inspiring, and I'm so excited that we get to keep working together.
Me too. Do you want me to say anything in particular?
I think if you could speak a little bit to how the Access Fellowship began and what we can do to continue this sort of work and encourage more theaters to engage in this kind of work.
So the first thing is my parents, both deaf, were great storytellers. And in the deaf community, the language is not written down. It is literally passed from hand to hand to hand. And towards the end of my father's life, I would tell stories about what I was doing and explaining about Chicago dramatists. And he said, when I die, give them money. Which made me feel like, oh, he understands about the importance of theater and the importance of telling stories. And when Carson and I started discussing the Access Project, there are many opportunities, not as many as there should be, but there are many opportunities for marginalized communities to get support around their work, both representation and financial and opportunity support. But there is very little around the disability community. That small word, Deb, as in your piece, where you talked about, you know, race and disability was not on the end of that sentence legally. So this was an opportunity for us to do that. I don't know what else you'd like me to say.
That was perfect. Thank you.
That was perfect.
Always.
Perfect. Always perfect.
Thank you, Arlene.
Of course. My father would say, of course.
We have a comment from the chat from friend of the theater, Judy Blue. Truly appreciate the ability to see the show today on YouTube, even with sound challenges. It is wonderful access. Thank you so much, Judy, and thank you to everyone for continuing to engage even as we faced these challenges. So I'd like to open it up to everyone here in person and at home with any questions you may have about this process, about this program, or any thoughts you have on how we can continue to progress the world of accessibility within theater.
Hello. I think one big thing for me with this, I think one big thing for me with this little process here is thinking about the use of mics in a space, because when it's a space that's, you know, we think of mics in larger theaters being, you know, necessary because you can't get all the way to the back. But in a space like this, you know, my impulse would be you probably don't need a mic because it's such a small space. But there's something about the idea of having not only that, like, obviously it assists with the performer because not every performer can project in the same way, but it also assists the audience to have the sound coming from directions that are not just the stage, that the sound becomes like unidirectional as opposed, or omnidirectional as opposed to unidirectional, which can certainly help for people, not only the distance from the stage, but just like, you know, where the sound is coming from and all of that. But yeah, I think about that because it's the kind of thing that I would say like, oh, it is an accessibility function, but not one that was necessary for a space like this or for a project like this that's, you know, one person talking. But it really does, you know, I can already see the possibilities of that and how even at this scale it would help.
Absolutely. Thank you, Zach. And yes, that was definitely one of the elements when we were setting up the tech here of like, we knew that we had to have the mics in order to make the live stream work and theoretically in order to make the captions work. But as I was playing around with that, figuring out how do we wire those up into the speakers, because if we're going to have microphones, we might as well take full advantage of them and make sure that they are used to their highest potential.
I'd like to make 2 comments. One was I appreciated that there were lights on in the theater so that people could communicate. I also appreciated that you had Amelia, who acted as a doula, an access doula, in case somebody needed a little extra assistance, whatever that was. I thought that was really smart and thoughtful. And the environment was very kind and generous when you walk through the door, so you could see people being comfortable, getting up, shifting in their seats, and that it felt very acceptable in this group.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that I forgot to announce in my opening speech, but we were really set on this being what is called a relaxed performance, which both comes with the lights remaining slightly on during the performance and taking away some of the stigmas surrounding how theaters tend to operate. Because I think while for some productions, I do understand the intentionality behind that like deep immersion where you lose yourself, overall, so much theater is about that building of community and that fact that we are able to interact with each other, whether it's here in the physical space, in the chat, in the virtual space, or what have you. And so we wanted to create an environment that encourages that, and also relaxed performances are very beneficial on the front of audience members who may experience sensory issues, or audience members who identify as neurodivergent that might need a little bit of additional support and the ability to talk to their neighbors or what have you. So that's also something, if you're a theater maker at home thinking about this, ask yourself, how much does your show need to be fully immersive, and how much does your show need to be a community space?
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
I'm going to weigh in on that for a second, which is, for me, I'm really interested, and it was very interesting for me to be, I'm usually out there, and it was very interesting to be up here. And I'm interested in all the possibilities as this kind of theater, as you do move forward, as we all move forward with this, and the different sort of aesthetic, because I really liked having the lights up. I liked seeing everybody. The way that, I mean, theater, I say this over and over again, but we are on this last beautiful bastion, possibly, of truly embodied art, you know, where it isn't all tech, and this combo of both, and then what's possible. I mean, I did feel relaxed in a way that I'm often not relaxed, and I need to think about this, but there's something else going on for me that you and I will keep talking about, because it was a really wonderful day for so many reasons, and yeah.
Looks like we've got a question from the audience.
I would just, Suzanne, that this kind of lighting, frankly, it didn't seem odd to me that I was in a theater and it was still light. And I just thought it went well with the kind of conversationality that I think of with a solo show. But that may be much of my active work on it has been on Zoom, where it all seems conversational. But, you know, it worked. You know, it worked for me. I didn't feel like something was wrong.
Glenn, can I ask you a question?
Yes, I'm just going to reiterate that real quick for the folks at home, because I think that mic might be a little rough. If we can bring the other mic down for the next comment. Our audience member was commenting on how it adds to the conversationality of the energy, which seems to fit the world of solo performance pretty well.
Can you tell us what, if everything worked, at home and here, what would we have gotten?
So if everything had worked, first things first, the original intention for the folks at home was to have multiple cameras set up that we would be able to cut between in order to have both the wider shot that you saw at home, but also get more close-ups so you could engage more directly with the performers' faces, and then during this portion of the talk back, we would be able to have one trained on us and one trained on the audience so that you could really see who is speaking when. Because of some last-minute issues with one of our cameras, we were left with just the one, but so that's step one. Step two, as far as the captioning screens go, the original intention was we were going to be testing out some AI captioning services in order to see if that was doable, because they tend to be on the cheaper side. Today we've learned why they are on the cheaper side. But that was also something that we realized, or I realized yesterday, was the fact that the captioning service that we were working with was also not fully forthcoming with how they were going to be operating. So even if the captions had been working today, there would have been a significant amount of lag. So in an ideal world, your best bet is to always utilize a live captioner, folks who are trained in that work. It is definitely more expensive, but it does the job so much better. I would also like to very quickly shout out a company called Caption Point. They are really effective for fully pre-scripted work, so they weren't going to be able to work for us since the talkback is so important, but they will fully create a set of captions for you for a production that you can use every night of the show for just $600. So if you are doing a piece that does not have ad-libs or talkback or what have you, highly recommend looking into Caption Point. They are fabulous, and they're Chicago-based. As well, the captions would have been identical between both the in-person and the live stream. I'm trying to think if there was anything else that didn't quite work. I think the other big ticket item is just the folks at home would have heard every word of the show. But that's also one of those things that's always going to be a challenge with live streaming, because ultimately what happened is we tested the sound all morning with when Deb was performing her piece with Kate, and it was working just fine. And then something about the way that the movement was going today was likely causing the cord to disconnect or something. And I was sitting backstage going, I don't want to interrupt her because what she's saying is beautiful. So I'm sorry, folks at home, but this is where we're at for today. But it's just something to keep in mind. Always, always, always have a backup.
And what do you feel really good about with all of the work that you've done today? We're in this room. What do you feel really good about?
I think the thing I feel best about is the fact that you are all still sitting here, and there were many, many folks who were still watching at home, even with all of these challenges. We were in this position where, you know, we were having to face all of these things, but events like these do show that there is want and support for this kind of work and this kind of improvement. And yeah, the fact that we, again, were able to create this community space was really lovely and really beautiful, and I'm so thankful to be a part of it. I think we've got a couple more questions down here before we wrap up.
Well, first I want to agree with one thing, which was keeping the lights on. In doing a solo show, it's so nice to be able to see faces, to react to, and to speak to. When it's a black hole, you know, they're there, but, you know, so for a solo show, that's kind of almost important. The other thing is, most people, when they talk about getting to know someone who's missing a sense, sight, or even touch, I suppose, hearing, their main thought is like, oh, I'm so lucky that I have that sense. But actually, when you are interacting with people who are different from you in lacking some sense, or in any way, really, it expands your world so much because you realize, okay, communication isn't just how I communicate. Here's how deaf people communicate, blind people communicate. There are differences that you pick up on, and it expands your vocabulary. And I mean, the most obvious example is Arlene, you know, clapping like clapping like this. That's fun. There's a lot of fun stuff that comes up, and a lot that just expands the way you communicate yourself. I don't know in drawing audiences if this takes too long to explain, but in writing about it, we could, you know, express that to people.
I wanted to say too, I was thinking about how much this project and watching, you know, what you had to deal with today, and it reminded me of how much I long sometimes for the more European model of making theater where we have more time. And when you talk about the larger houses, and if anyone's worked in the larger houses and what we experienced in a larger house once, there wasn't enough time. And I would put a plug in for future, how, you know, when we think about, you know, it's not just a luxury. It shouldn't just be a luxury. It should be an integral part of an understanding of how to make this kind of work. And it would be something I would love to advocate for and start writing grants for and things like that, right?
We're going to take one last comment from here, and then we'll be wrapping things up.
It segues off of, is this on?
Yes.
Is this, it segues off of this idea of writing grants, because I was reminded of something, frankly, from off of what Suzanne was saying, and that I remember hearing someone, and I think it's in the disability community, once saying that the able people, everyone is the temporarily able, because most people in their lives at some point will experience a disability, whether it's a physical movement or all of that. And I would think in writing for grants a well-crafted paragraph that what you are working on is not just for people that people tend to think about, but that quite honestly, most people are aging or a fall or an accident or an illness away from also being disabled. And I think if you're looking to funding sources, I would make them gently aware of that, because then their funding of it, often people fund things that they can see in their own lives or someone they know. And I'm all about making sure people get their money.
Thank you so much. Oh, one more?
Yeah, I just want to say that this is a wonderful piece, but we had a first piece, and I just want to say that at the end of Arlene's piece, we actually saw the disability happen, you know, when she says, "Who are you?" or whatever the last line was. So that was, you know, a wonderful piece and great acting. I know.
Yes, we are.
That was Arvine's choice.
Yes, that.
That was Arvine's choice. Yes.
Yes. So thank you all so much for coming. We have another show here this evening, so we're going to have to wrap it up there. Yes, please applaud. We're fabulous. For those of you here, we encourage you to grab a drink on your way out. Again, please, please, please fill out your survey at your earliest convenience, and please donate to support the Access Fellowship. Thank you so much.
Thank you.